but it'll be fun. It's just, I like the energy of like, okay, we're live, guys.
Yeah.
And and then we are recording. Fantastic. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do also, because I want to make sure that when you're speaking, we have your focus. Ravi Toor, right?
That's right. Tour, however you want to say it, but tour.
I want to say it the way you want me to say it. And
Tour. Like giving a
it.
tour.
Nice. Okay, fantastic. Well, the purpose of our Lead Stronger, Longer interview and these episodes is to get an inside understanding into the leader's journey, their struggles, okay, their genuine challenges, their triumphs as well, right? We want to know those, but most of the times we only see the good side. Sometimes that's not true, but we want to get an inside take from someone who's willing to be vulnerable. So I invite guests on that I resonate with. And my guest today, Ravi, is definitely one of those. So these are the steps, though, that one would take to lead stronger, longer, hence the name of our podcast and my book. So this is essentially really comfortable. Grab a cup of tea, relax. We're going to have a conversation with Ravi. I'm going to introduce Ravi based on her bio, and we'll get started. So Ravi is a leadership and business development expert. She was born in Canada. She's enriched by diverse experiences in the nonprofit, private sectors, and entrepreneurship. Hence the similarities. Ravi's foundation in psychology, corporate operations, and conscious leadership. This is what has carved her path as a champion of change and what resonated with me the most about Ravi. So when she recognized a gap in the market in 2017, she seized the opportunity to become a pioneer in conscious leadership and corporate social responsibility. Her conviction that true sustainable change is orchestrated by passionate individuals and purpose-driven enterprises, rather than relying on that solely bureaucratic structure. So please welcome Ravi Toor.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. That's a great bio. I have to give credit to the folks that wrote that.
Okay.
To them. But no, the essence is there, and that really is what I stand for and who I am. So it's thanks so much for sharing that, Stephana.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to start with quotes or a mantra. So what's your favorite quote or mantra?
So it's not as, so what kind of got me started and always was the foundation of who I am is be the change you want to see in the world, right? Mahatma Gandhi. That was the meaningful piece for me. But what has transformed as the leader or the leading mantra is something that is not well known because this comes from me, but create meaningful change without changing who you are. I think that is the essence to impact and leadership. Learning to create meaningful impact without changing the foundation or the core of who you are as an individual.
I really, really love that. And if you were to look at how that actually applies to yourself, as I see how you could help others step into that, can you share some personal stories around this, of how this actually shows up in your life? And if there was a moment that was the catalyst that actually said, wait a minute, yeah, this is, you mentioned the 2017, but this quote specifically that you were talking about for yourself, I can imagine that there's a before and after, and I would love really to get the story behind that.
Yeah. And so, basically it's an experience quote. So it's something that's been developed through the years. And so 2017 being kind of where things were established, I remember being in corporate finance, working the job I had been doing. And in that time, I was able to identify that market gap. And I was told that it was just a trend or a phase. And I knew better. And I knew I had to trust myself. And so that probably is where things really got kicked off. But when I really was able to create this quote for myself, it was actually for my clients, working on a product specifically for clients. where I realized, okay, the goal of what I'm trying to achieve is helping them create this change externally without changing the internal foundation of who they are, which is really creating that foundation of authenticity. And so if we want to talk about where that really got carved out for myself, it would have been in 2018, where I realized some of my choices in business and as a leader I wasn't staying true to who I was. I wasn't within my authenticity. And for any leader who's veered from authenticity, who's gone against the grain of who they are, you can all understand that it becomes this chaotic turmoil in your life that you cannot shake until you get back to the basics of who you are, the foundation of who you are. And when I recognized where I was in terms of inauthentic expression, inauthentic capacity, inauthentic leadership, really, that's what it was. I realized that, I need to be able to create impact, and that was the goal, but I need to do it without changing who I am. So how do I maintain who I am? And then from there, create the impact outwards. And that's really how that came about.
So this stems from, ultimately, you've got to know yourself, because clearly there was a time where you maybe had to take a second look and go, wait a minute, this is not congruent. So what am I going to do here? What was that moment for you? And was it like this? So there's usually a turning point in folks' lives. Sometimes they really hit up against a wall. And one of the things that I get the most feedback from are those vulnerable stories that folks share. So I'm going to poke a little bit here and just ask, because I know you do it for clients and you help them bring out that piece. And well, we have a very similar, what we're doing. I focus on the energy component, but that your energy, if your energy is not congruent and aligned, you're going to definitely not be, firing. You're going to show up and repel, because there is an energy field. It's not just this physical body. And so when we look at it in that perspective, and we can go to those moments of evolving as a leader, what are some of those things that a leader could look for internally, but also externally? How are people showing up in their world? And what could they go like, and see as signs on that road of like, yeah, I've lost it, when maybe they're too close to it and they don't really see like, yeah, something's going on. And I don't know, I just got to suck it up and I just got to get through it. And I just got to put more hours in, when they're actually going in the wrong direction. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to use a story of mine. I love vulnerability. And I think we learn through story. That's just really the truth of humanity, is the stories where we learn. So I'm going to use this very specific story. 2018, I was contracted. I took 2 gigs that were contract work, and I would come in as a contractor, and then they turned into employment. Right. And so as an entrepreneur, business development is difficult in startup. Like, we're just going to be real about this, right? Building a business is not easy. It can be, you can pursue it in easier ways. The more authentic you are, the easier it becomes. But the foundation of business development is challenging. And so I thought, at the time, what would infuse more revenue or income into my life without, burning me out to the state that I was at? And so I took a gig in 2018, and I was a fractional COO for a company out in Vegas. And so at first, things were going quite well. Everything was working out well. I was showing up as my best self and leading the team and working on the organization. It was great. And then I started to get requests from the CEO directly that just were not aligned. Every time I hit my ear, my stomach wouldn't feel well. I wouldn't feel well about it. And, I'd continuously get into these conversations, really thought partnering with her, as I thought, to create the shift in the request. And what I kept finding was it was falling on deaf ears, and I was being ultimately forced to make decisions that I didn't want to make. I didn't think they were necessary, and they were impacting the organization, but the team as a whole. Well, it came to a certain point where I was asked to, now firing and hiring, that's part of business. When you're running an organization, firing and hiring is part of business. But I was asked to fire a lot of people for no real good reason. And it just did not sit well with me. It was not a good experience whatsoever. And at that time, I recognized I have a voice and I haven't used it. That was the first, that was kind of the first aha moment. And I started to really pay attention to the different things that had transpired over the course of a year, where my home life had started to deteriorate because I was working such long hours. And it's cool when you're burning the candle at both ends, if it's for a short period of time, but if it's prolonged, I mean, that's just not sustainable. And also there's a deeper issue that's involved there. I also noticed that my awareness had shifted from impact. That's why I was there at the organization, to money. And I was there now for the cash. And that had completely changed the way I was thinking and the way I was operating. And that was far from the meaningful change I wanted to create, which was impact. The other shift that I started to notice was a sense of guilt and a sense of disconnect. I was no longer enjoying my reality, period. That's just how I put it, right? You can put it in whatever form you want to, but when you start to disconnect from your own reality and not enjoy what you're participating in, whether that's work related or some form of leadership, whether it's volunteer or whatever it may be, it's no longer a fit. And I couldn't recognize the signs prior to this crucial moment where I was asked to get rid of a bunch of employees for no good reason, right? And I recognized at that point, the biggest gift I've had has been my voice, right? So I always talk about, we as individuals have gifts, whether we're speakers, whether we're writers, whether we're presenters, whether we are collaborators, whatever that is, you have a natural gift. And the more you tap into that, the more you can, the more headway you'll get. And I realized that my voice had really just dulled down. I wasn't standing up for important things anymore. I wasn't speaking out. I wasn't even really using my voice for impact. It was more of just, the mundane things within the organization. So at that pivotal moment, I realized I can't do this. This is not going to happen. And so I made the clear decision to actually no longer work for the organization. And I let the CEO know that they would need to actually make those choices for themselves and make those, make those fires if that's what they needed to do. But I was no longer a fit for the company, nor was I willing to take on the burden that was being presented to me. And that was a real hard one, because one of the things that I was doing was I was getting rid of the financial security I had created for myself as someone who's in business. Is not, you don't create stability immediately, right? It's ebbs and flows, right? And so for me, I recognize that walking away from the stability of finances was a huge call for me, because security is one of the biggest things I strive for. And I knew at that point that I was lasered in to who I was and the foundation of who I was. And so fast forward to about 2021, a similar situation took place where I joined as a contractor, a company that was a for-profit, purpose-driven company. And, on the external, incredible to the purpose, the drive, what the company was doing, it was all great. The internal was a whole different story. And I think I lasted about 9 months before I called it quits there as well and said, this is not okay. And I actually used my voice multiple times to convey that the purpose that the message we were using to drive purpose and impact was actually greenwashing and was not accurate to what was happening. And that, if anybody knows anything about what I do based off of my bio or taking a look at who I am, it's the exact opposite of who I am. And so I had to call it quits there too. But yet
that is so common. That is so common in big organizations.
Yeah.
And especially when there's maybe they put out something and they're going to sell the company, and then you get inside and you're like, whoa, what's going on? And then the shakeup. Okay, I cut you off a little bit, but there was a
No,
couple of
please.
things that you said that were really key. And this is important for anyone listening, because when you share stories like this, people are going, aha, I know that moment. I missed that moment too. And whoa, and hey, and she's giving me permission to be like, okay, I need to sit down and think about this. And yeah, the money and the security. And you said all those buttons, all those hot buttons that are definitely so crucial for leaders who want to lead stronger, longer, right? We cannot have leaders who are here to make that big positive impact, losing sight of the key. And that
Absolutely.
key is that awareness.
Mhm.
Now, it's not someone else's awareness. What Ravi has with regards to her voice and what's really important for her and making her type of impact may be different than yours. So listening well and understanding what she just took you through is a hero's journey.
Mm.
And this is a gift for all of us, that just because you are in those dark nights of the soul, or you are in those trenches, or you are fighting the dragons, that does not mean life is over. That means there is another life ahead of you that's waiting to be unfolded for you. And I'm sure Ravi will tell in a year from now, she'll have more stories. But this concept around awareness was key. That's something that you said, awareness.
Yep.
Internal awareness, but also external awareness. So you were aware enough, you were awake enough to look at, whoa, there's been a big shift here, and this is not resonating. The other thing that you talked about was you felt it in your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is really key for leaders to understand, because a lot of times leaders will get disconnected from their own physical body, yet your body is where your power is stored. And if you lose touch with that information that's coming from your body and that alignment, your gut, you said,
Yeah.
you felt nauseous, you felt sick, you felt it was something, and as you even moved, your body shifted, because the body will tell you things, as will your heart, as will your voice. So this was very poignant. And then just go on a little bit, because you then brought in the second piece, and you made that choice with regards to the second job that you decided after 9 months you were going to complete. How do you approach those hard conversations?
Yeah. That's a great question. And so I'll say this, hard conversations are probably the best conversations to have. They really create such a power moment for you, especially in your development as a leader, but as an individual as well. And, let me put it this way. I believe leadership and individualism are not separate. I think they're completely the same. And so I'm going to be authentic here and say, you as a leader, if you own your leadership, having hard conversations is a natural process, but it's that opportunity to grow, because when we're comfortable, and it's funny, Stephana and I will be able to share in this analogy, but comfort doesn't allow you to change, and we hear this on a regular basis. And so with that, I was able to navigate this hard conversation a few times. So at first it started with within my hierarchy. So with the director, and really having these harder conversation. Listen, these are the key issues that I'm seeing, in really understanding how I was going to deliver solutions. What were we going to do? So not just coming to the conversation with complaints, but rather understand the issues, position them with kindness, empathy, and care, and really get a broad understanding of how you can create the change that you want to with the team players that you want to create, right? So that's number one. The second piece was solutions. Come to the conversation with solutions. What are you going to do to be able to create change, right? Yourself, other members, be super crystal clear on that. Who needs to take the action? Who are the decision makers that need to be in place? So really understanding, again, it's like mapping out the conversation, right? Like a workflow or an idea, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. You map out the conversation beforehand, right? Outline it out and get really crystal clear so that you can be authentic in your delivery. So that happened a few times. And what I recognized was although I made the best of the conversations and although I got the commitments that I wanted, it was all verbal and there was no actionable outcome at the end, right? Nobody actually took the action. And that started to, that just started to piss me off, to be really honest with you, because at that point, I need to see some change if I'm bringing this stuff to you and I'm being consistent and caring. And it's really for the betterment of the organization and the mission, right? That's really it. What are we going to do? And so I had to move that up more. And at the same time, I had to really coach my team who was in the trenches with me, right? So as I'm trying to drive the initiative of change through the hierarchy and through the foundation of the operations, what I needed to also do was maintain leadership with my team and coach them through this, because understand that the members that are underneath you or even alongside you, they have their own anxieties. And you as a leader need to support them through this whilst you're doing the other foundational elements to creating change or change management, right? So at that point, I've coached my team. I continuously am coaching them and creating space for their feelings and experiences and validating them. That's a key piece, but also working with the hierarchy. And I got to a certain point where I realized, oh, this is beyond change. At this point, again, it's more of the cabinet members who have got major issues and are unwilling to change. And so at that point, it was very clear that I had to have a conversation with the CEO, and I did. So I had that conversation with the CEO. Promises were made, all these things, same kind of format that I took into the conversation. Promises were made, change was not delivered. And at a certain point, when I recognized that it was the way it was, I had to take that conversation to human resources, let them know about that, and then make it clear that this was no longer a fit for myself or a fit for, we just were not a fit. And so at that point, we parted ways, but hard conversations are not as hard. They get a bad rep. They're not as hard as you think they are. And I think everyone who's been in a position of leadership has at one point or another not only had a hard conversation, but a hard conversation go really well. And that is if you're prepared and bring kindness and are authentic, you understand your responsibility, and then you innovate solutions. So you don't just come, with a problem, but you're coming to problem solve collaboratively. And you've got your own initiatives that you want to drive that may solve the issue. It can become a very easy conversation. It can't guarantee change, but what it can guarantee is that you use your voice in a really responsible and effective way, and you continue to drive authenticity and integrity as the forefront of everything you do.
Yeah, powerful. I think that's a beautiful model of what a conversation can look like when we consider it hard, but that's also a judgment, right? So that we're judging that it's hard or going to be hard. And I think that just adds to the stress on it. When we get into like having empathy, self-empathy, as well as empathy for like, okay, this is what's going on, and being able to and willing to face what needs to be faced from, again, that primary virtue of integrity.
Yeah.
Which is integrity starts with the self, starts with that leader having their own sense of self and alignment and honesty and truth. Then that authenticity comes from a space of congruency, right? I think authenticity is often overused, vulnerability and all of these, buzzwords and such. But the fact of the matter is, there is an appropriate way there is right and wrong.
Right.
And there is truth and non-truths. And those are tangible and we know them. And I think it's been skewed in a variety of different ways. But the willingness to communicate is vital, because ultimately communication can lead to that understanding and the change, the positive change, that positive change that you're looking for. Do you have a book or books? I always love getting book recommendations. So I'm curious if you have just like, this is your go-to book.
Yeah, I really thought about this. And to be honest with you, I am not a book reader. I just do not have the bandwidth for reading books. I'm a consumer for sure, but I consume off of audio or video. That's my go-to. And so, when I think about, I will say, and this is going to sound a little abnormal, but it's just vital to my whole process. The book 1984 really gave me yeah. So the book 1984 is a really powerful book to me, and it really gave me an understanding of leadership. Let's just put it that way. It really gave me, it's just a story, but it's really powerfully written, and the nuances are the power pieces, right? And really drove a lot of thought for me. But when I think about what do I consume on a daily basis, a lot of my content is consumed via video and audio, and I have specific names. And so there's two names that I specifically listen to on a regular basis that I'm just going to say. And both of them, everybody knows, I believe everybody knows, but one is Gary Vaynerchuk. I can't go without him. I think he has a great mind and is very strategic and just is willing to be vulnerable at all levels and just be honest about it. And I think that's more of what we need in leadership more than ever today, as we start to chart on uncharted territories, right? As we start to broach topics we've never discussed in organization, let alone business, let alone leadership before. So that's one. And then Dr. Joe Dispenza. And the reason why I bring this one up is because and I've read a few of his books and so forth, so I just consume all of his stuff. Is Stephana, what you were saying about the body and even the foundation. So leadership is not necessarily a title. It is a title, but it's really it's the whole of you, right? Leadership, again, isn't just an identity. It's you stepping up, elevating yourself to your evolutionary state of potential, and then moving into a place where you can create change. And that requires the whole of you, understanding your biases, understanding your conditions and programs, understanding your body, and understanding what happens if you continue to go against who you are, how that's going to manifest itself in your external reality, your body, and so forth. And so for me, Dr. Joe Dispenza was vital to everything I did, because in order for me to lead other leaders, let alone aspiring leaders or myself through this journey, 7-year journey of entrepreneurship, I had to really understand who I was internally and work on the conditions and programs that kept me, disempowered and stuck and all those pieces. So those would be my recommendations. 1984. If you're looking for a good read, it's dense, but it's a good read. And then, of course, listen to Gary Vaynerchuk and Dr. Joe Dispenza, and your life will be made.
I love it. Those are great recommendations.
Thank you.
Yeah. And this is where it allows for you to unfold and see this deliciousness of conscious. Now, I had someone say to me when I was talking about conscious leadership, they said, well, aren't we all conscious?
No.
Isn't that redundant? Because you're awake, you're like walking around conscious. And I thought, oh, this is so interesting. This is really interesting. So can you just leave us with a nugget around your essence on conscious leadership, how you show up for your clients, and you can even, if you'd like to, let people know how they can find out more about you. I know she's on LinkedIn, folks, so you can go to her LinkedIn profile. She's got some good articles on there and she shares them regularly. So I can speak for that. But is there, if someone would like to reach out to you, and then we'll say goodbye, and I'll say thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little nugget, I guess what I would say is to what you were saying, we are not conscious in our leadership until we choose to be, right? And we make that meaningful adjustment. And so again, when you are aware of yourself and aware of, what your outputs are and what causes those outputs, whatever that may be, whether it's organizational structure, whether it's leading a team, whether it's innovation, whatever it may be, once you start to become super aware of what is your makeup, what belongs to you, what doesn't belong to you, what you would rather identify for yourself, when you make those choices, you take leadership to the conscious level and you lead in your life first. Once you do that, then it's about taking that and expanding it as a a community piece, or that ripple effect, right? So when we're thinking of leadership as a macro, you are the macro, and then all those little pieces outside of you. So when you choose to wake up or be completely engaged in your life and choose for yourself, that's when I think you're really conscious, and that's where you can make true impact, both with your leadership and in your leadership. So that's kind of my nugget there. In terms of connecting with me, please do come and hang out with me in LinkedIn. I love it. I've literally live on LinkedIn. I was talking to my team this morning. I don't go on my Facebook anymore. I don't go on my Instagram anymore. I don't go on the other platforms. LinkedIn is the place I want to be. And the media is telling you so too, right? It's huge. And so I love LinkedIn, but of course you can check me out at ravitoor.co if you ever want to check out my website, but please come and open up a DM with me. I'd love to chat, and let me know that you heard me or saw me on Stephana's show, and we can talk some more. It'd be great.
I love this. You know, one thing that you said as you were talking about this consciousness, awareness, and leading yourself first is that this is important for everyone to know, that even just, you don't have to have a huge organization that you're leading, but your own energy, when you show up from this place of wholeness and this awareness and this sense of consciousness with your action. And what is an action? It's basically, right, your thoughts are the first step of your action. So your thoughts are internal, and this is an important piece to really take heed. What Ravi has shared is profound in any scope of leadership, stepping into that place of awareness and tapping into your voice with may I say, incredible grace. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I love when I just get to just soak up deliciousness, and it just resonates and fills my heart. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And
thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for reaching out to have this conversation. We were in sync when we first met. There were so many synchronicities, but this conversation has been quite fluid and beautiful. So thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who listened today. This was a great time. I really enjoyed myself.